It's time for me to pre-assemble the posts and beam out on the driveway where I can lay it flat before we reassemble it over our scaffolding later. It seems like a lot of extra work pulling off and putting the posts back on again. But when you're building a structure like this by yourself, I've found it the most accurate and safest way.
You come and go like a monsoon rain. You hide and show like a lightning bolt. You have it all.
The next project for this property, after completing our step and paver entryway, is to rebuild this awning. We're going to be replacing the iron with clear laser light so they can get more light into this side of the house. Today we're going to be demolishing the existing iron on top in preparation for building a new frame and then sheeting it with our laser light so they can get more light in here, get less moss building up on things.
This is what our awning will look like when completed, but first we're going to have to deconstruct the old one. My first step is to remove the old rusting iron roof. There's a few rivets to drill out on the flashing, and the rest is held together with some roofing screws and nails. I don't trust the strength of this structure to stand on the outside of the awning. I think it's going to be safer to work from the ladder and lean over to remove the roof nails. Using a small crowbar and hammer, I work my way over the entire surface of the roof, working slowly and carefully to remove all the nails. It's important to continually reposition the ladder as we work from one section to the next. I try to take extra care when I'm working from the top of a ladder. Even from this height, you could sustain a serious injury if you had a fall. After removing all the nails from the outside of the awning, I've decided the inside is strong enough to take my weight. Working backwards, I remove the last remaining nails and peel the tin off as I go. Demolition of a structure like this can be extremely dangerous, and I don't recommend it unless you're a professional tradesman.
I remember urban songs, decades old, but it doesn't matter. Stumble across old memories, try to recall before they shatter. She kept dreaming of a world big enough for everyone, but she knew it must rain before it rose. She kept dreaming of the day butterflies survived the wheel, even though she could knock down and never showed.
Demolition complete, the next thing I have to do is construct a temporary scaffold to set the beam and posts in place. I attach some temporary blocks to the existing roof rafters to give my scaffold a secure anchor point. I'm carefully measuring the bottom of the eave. I need to calculate where I'm going to set the outside beam. It has to sit lower than the eave so the rain will run off it, but not too low that you bump your head on it when you walk outside the back door. The temporary rafter I'm screwing into place is what's going to hold the beam up whilst the cement sets on the bottom of the posts later on. I double check the whole thing with my level to make sure that it's slightly leaning downhill away from the house. When I'm satisfied I've got the correct angle, I lock it into place with a temporary post. I duplicate this frame on the other side of the deck and lock it into place with a few cross beams. I prepared earlier that has all the key dimensions and layout of the structure. It also helps me calculate all the materials I'll need on site, including the roof sheeting. I'm using a piece of scrap timber to calculate where our posts are going to be set. My client wants the awning to extend past the deck area, and there's a wooden step we have to build it around. So by visually looking at this scrap piece and double checking it with my tape measure, I can get a clear idea of how I want to lay out these posts. The parking space right next to our construction project is a good place to stack all my materials and cut them as I need to length. As I set up to cut the first of the 2 posts, I always double check my timber sitting exactly flat on my miter saw before I make the cut. It's important for me to check this first post in place to make sure all our calculations are correct before moving on to cutting the second post. I lay the first one over the top of the second one and scribe it, then double check with my tape measure. I don't have any spare material, and because I'm working out in the countryside, it's a long way for me to resupply if I cut the piece wrong, so it's always worth triple checking. I lay both pieces next to each other in preparation for marking the checkouts. Because these posts are identical to each other, it's more accurate and efficient to mark them both at the same time. This notch is what's going to hold the main beam in place. After clearly marking the area where the material needs to be removed from, I set the depth of my saw blade in preparation for the cut. I want to remove 22.5 millimeters from the top of our posts. This first cut has to be accurate and square as it sets the outside boundary of the notch we're creating. I then make multiple sliced cuts, working from the end of the post back to the first cut. The thin slices I created with the saw make it easy to remove most of the material by knocking it out with a hammer. I then finish off the process with my chisel, continuing to smooth it out. The saw cuts act as a guide to how deep the notch is supposed to be. I work slowly and carefully with the chisel to smooth out all the bumps that sit above the saw notches, so I end up with a flat and flush base for the beam to be attached to later. After I've removed most of the material, I use my set square to highlight any bumps that I need to chip away. My orbitable sander removes any of the last burrs and helps round off the corners. I then repeat the whole process on the second post.
Back up the drive a bit, could you see what this is? This is a part of it all. Over and over, injustice to injury, this is a part of it all. Could you hike back to it, fight with it, sit with it, this is a part of it all.
With the checkouts on the post complete, it's time for me to pre-assemble the posts and beam out on the driveway where I can lay it flat, drill my holes and check that it's square before we reassemble it over our scaffolding later. I mark out my bolt holes with the square and pencil and then drill a small pilot hole as a guide for the larger drill bit. The smaller pilot holes help the large drill bit from drifting off center. I'm drilling through the beam into the post, then using a bolt to lock it in place. Double check the joint is square and drill the second hole. I repeat this process for the second post and then start assembling all the pieces in place over our scaffolding.
Will you only drink from the thoughts of yourself? Are you under the canopy spell? You dig in your heels and spread the disease. You're spreading the disease. Back up the drive a bit, could you see what this is? This is a part of it all. Over and over, injustice to injury, this
pieces are set in the correct place on the scaffold, I double check with my level and realise I need to add a 10mm packer on one end to have it completely flat. With the posts hanging plumb in the final position they're going to be in, I set a scrap piece of wood directly under them so I know where to dig the hole for the concrete I'll be putting in later. I unbolt the posts and return them to our work area so I can install the steel brackets that'll be sitting in our concrete and connected to our posts. I hold the bracket tight and centered to the post, then drill one hole halfway through. I insert a bolt in this hole to hold the bracket in place, then drill my second hole and insert a second bolt in that hole. I roll the posts over and get the other two holes started with my drill, then remove the bracket and the bolts and drill out the holes to the back of the post. Then I assemble the bracket with bolts and nuts, just a finger tight, to check its fit. I complete the process on the second post and cut off the nuts flush with the bolts with my grinder.
Of all the magic places in the world I've been to, this is where my heart is. Oh, you know it's true. No matter where I go, I'm coming home to you. Been walking down the street so many times, my feet know every brick and stone. Could wear a blindfold. No matter what I do, I'm coming home to you. And I don't know why, don't know why, don't know why I'm always feeling homesick.
With our holes for the concrete dug to the right depth and in the right place, I reassemble the posts onto the beam. I check they're completely vertical and plumb with my level before tightening off all the bolts. It's important not to over tighten the nuts. I don't want to crush and bruise the timber. I do one last check with the level, as after we've poured our concrete, these posts won't be adjustable. It seems like a lot of extra work pulling off and putting the posts back on again. But when you're building a structure like this by yourself, I've found it the most accurate and safest way to complete the process. To prepare for the concrete pour, I'm adding a piece of plywood next to the hole to avoid cave-ins. I also need to add some timber bracing to the very bottom of the posts to stop the concrete pushing them out of alignment when we pour it.
I've seen many places where the beauty never ends. 'Cause the thing is, I've got more love here than I can bear. Ooh. Of all the magic places in the world I've been to, this is where my heart is. Oh, you know it's true. No matter where I go, I'm coming home to you. Been walking down the street so many times, my feet know every brick and stone. Could wear a blindfold. No matter what I do, I'm coming home to you.
Our construction location is close to the beach and has very sandy soil. I'll be adding recycled concrete pieces to create larger footings than I might normally do. I'm making a standard high-strength concrete using pre-mixed bags. I often mix concrete from the raw elements as I did earlier in this project. It's a lot more economical for large volumes of concrete. But in this case, it's just a small amount of concrete, so it's quicker and easier to use the pre-bagged mix.
Now everything that has been don't matter no more. We've burned it. All those whirlwinds can't touch us no more. We've earned it. Everything that has been don't matter no more. We've burned it. All those whirlwinds can't touch us no more. We've earned it.
I have a strategy for mixing recycled concrete into my foundations without compromising the strength of it. The recycled concrete pieces need to be washed and thoroughly clean so they can adhere to the wet concrete. I use pure concrete mix for the top 150mm of the foundation to give it an extra strong top layer and avoid any cracking on the surface. It's also important to make sure there's wet concrete surrounding each recycled piece. That way the whole foundation can connect together the same way a brick wall would with mortar in between the bricks. I top off our second post hole with concrete until it's about 75mm from the bottom of our bracket. I allow the foundations to set up solid overnight before removing the timber braces the next morning.
Come closer, dance for me. Easy tiger, easy, let your hair down. Come closer, let me see all your million faces and all your million mistakes. You don't need to hide. Come closer so that we can be together. Everything that has been don't matter no more. We've burned it all.
After removing some of the framing from our scaffold that's no longer needed, I start setting the other major beam that'll be part of the core of the main frame for our roof support. I've attached my large set square with a clamp to the outside beam so I can roughly line up the inside beam square to the structure. I've left the side beams of the awning long so I can scribe them in place for a more accurate cut. I temporarily attach it tight up against the rafter so I can get my pencil mark. After cutting it to size, I return it in place and check to see how flush the join is on the outside of the awning. I'm satisfied it's fitting snugly. My next step is to remove this side beam, switch the safety bracket to the other side, and then test fit it on the other side of our awning to see if it matches. After confirming that it fits properly, I use this beam as a template to cut a second beam, then attach both of them in place to complete the principal framing of our awning.
This rain's really setting in, so we're going to take a break, come back tomorrow and finish the rest of the framing.
Join me in the next episode as we complete the construction of our polycarbonate awning.
Your eyelids and perfect lips got me rushing pen and I'm so lit. Like lilies you open, the fragrance goes to my head, my darling. I get everything that has been don't matter no more. We've burned it. All those whirlwinds can't touch us no more. We've earned it. We've earned it.
joining me this week in my YouTube channel. Check the link below, and while you're at it, hit the subscribe button or make a comment so I can help you with your future construction solutions. And don't forget to follow our channel for more ideas and how-to tips for home and garden projects.